Hello and welcome to the Reality of Dreams. I'm your host, Robin Cunningham with Fireside Grace Ministries. Sorry, I was like 20 seconds late or something like that. Getting started, had to get everything looking spiffy here because I was downstairs getting my cup of coffee and brushing my teeth and putting on cologne because for whatever reason I like to smell good and have clean teeth when I'm about to go live. It keeps me from getting distracted. So today, we are going to cover Daniel's dream from Daniel chapter 7. This is going to be a part 1. This might be a 2 or 3 part thing because this is not a simple dream. This is a long dream. But this is going to have to do with end time stuff, and I'm going to break down what Daniel is seeing in his dreams and how we know what he's seeing and what it's actually being said. Because the angel does give Daniel a good definition or description of what is going to be happening in the end of days, but there's more to it than just that. So let's go ahead and roll the intro and jump on into it, shall we? Okay, welcome back. So, like I said, we're going to talk about Daniel chapter 7 and the end times dream, where this is the chapter where he sees the 4 beasts for the first time, and we're going to cover that. But first, if you're watching, we are trying to raise money for a family of Fireside Grace that has been hit by a tornado. They are without electricity. It took out their electricity, took out their roof, destroyed everything in their bedroom, took down some trees and stuff, and they're in great need. Just to get electricity back is going to cost them $600. They've got to pay for out of their pocket, let alone however much it costs to replace the entire roof on their house and so forth. So if you would like to help us to help that family meet their needs, you can do so. I'll run that banner here. All the information is right down here. Firesidegrace.com/partner with us. Brandy's Venmo is Brandy-Cloninger. PayPal is Reformers Church, or you can just look up at Fireside Grace, and it should show up. Or you can send checks to 2145 North Josey Lane, Suite 116-501, Carrolton, Texas 75006. And I am sure that they will be greatly, greatly blessed by you. And I'd like to thank you in advance for helping meet the needs of this family because they're not exactly young. I wouldn't say they're elderly, but they're at least twice my age. So they're up there. But I'm not going to say any ages or anything because I don't want people to feel old or discriminated or whatever, because it's 2023. You never know what people are going to think. So there's that. All right. So we will be traveling here pretty soon. Like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. And let's go ahead and jump into this. I am going to try to get through as much of this as I can within the next 57 minutes. All right. So you're going to have to try and keep up with me. If I finish before 57 minutes, that's great, but that'll be the end of the lesson. I'll try to get some dreams interpreted if we have time. But we're going to cover who are the B'nai Ha-Adam, who are the B'nai Ish, who are the B'nai Elohim. We are going to cover the beasts, and we're going to talk about the things that are being seen in Daniel's dream. So we will start out with Daniel's dream. This is coming from Daniel chapter 7. This will be verses 2 through 14, okay? And I want to say we're probably going to get up to maybe verse 3. So this might be like a 3 or 4 part series, okay? And it says, Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second beast like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring and breaking in pieces and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there, in this horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. I watched until the thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered. It says 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. I watched then, because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their own dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Isn't that interesting? I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away. His kingdom, the one which shall not be destroyed. So, all right, so that's pretty interesting dream to have. You know, Daniel did have some references. Interesting. Daniel did have some references to what would be going on in the end of days. Daniel chapter 7 was written after Daniel chapter 2. And the reason I say that is because the book of Daniel is not written in chronological order. It's like books 1 through 4, and then like 6 through 8, and then 5 and 7, and like 9 through whatever, however many books there are in the book of Daniel. But they're not in chronological order. They're not put in the Bible in chronological order. So not only in this case, he did have a reference to what was going to happen in the end of days from Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which is awesome. This is what established Daniel really as a wise man in the eyes of the king. And then he also had some stuff from Isaiah, who had written his stuff at about 800 BC. And then I want to say around 600 BC or so was Jeremiah. And then, of course, Ezekiel and Daniel were right around the same time frame, and God spoke to Ezekiel about what was coming in the end of days also. Okay, so this dream is an end of days dream. We know this because it's prophesied to him by the angel that this is an end of days dream. Okay, so he did have some reference as to what was going on. He did understand some things that we have been lost through the thousands of years since this was written, and the information and knowledge that they had back then that was common knowledge that was thought to be silly or stupid through the years and was altered or changed in some way, shape, or form. Like, for example, Adam knew exactly who the B'nai Ha-Elohim were and who the giants were, right? And when he wrote about it, right? And so did the people of his time when he was writing the book of Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and the book of Numbers, okay? That's the first 5 books. So he knew who the B'nai Ha-Elohim were, he knew who the Nephilim were, and he knew who the daughters of Adam were, the Binot Ha-Adam, okay? And then people started to say, well, the B'nai Ha-Elohim are the fallen angels, and the Nephilim are the giants, and I mean, that doesn't even make sense because Nephilim means fallen ones, and Satan is called a Nephalta, and he's a what? A fallen angel, so therefore he's a singular Nephalta versus the plural Nephalim, which means more than one angels. Okay, fallen angels, all right? But we're going to get into that here in a little bit. So when we're interpreting a dream, one of the first things we need to do is identify who is the dream about. Is it about you, or is it about somebody else? And the easiest way to do that is to take the dreamer out of the dream. And if you take the dreamer out of the dream, does the dream fall apart? For example, if I said I was in a boat, I was canoeing down the river, and I did this and I did that, and then this happened to me, and then I got out of the boat. Well, we take the me out of the picture and what was happening. Nobody was canoeing down a river. Nobody was in a boat. Nobody had anything happen to them. Nothing happened to anybody. The dream doesn't exist anymore. So then the dream was about me. Now, if, for example, Daniel says, I had a night vision and behold, I was looking. He uses that word looking. It's hazan or hazah, and it means to look or to behold. Now, when he has this type of, it basically it represents a vision. He saw a vision, okay? So the word hazan is a word for vision, okay? Now, it's a night vision, which is what we call a dream, okay? But in this, and I believe all dreams are visions, and the only thing is not all dreams are, well, all dreams are visions, so let me just stay on script here, all right? We see that Daniel said it's a hazah. He saw, okay? So this is a symbolic type of vision. So that's a pretty good indicator that this is, obviously it's a type of dream, which is exactly what Daniel said. And the Hebrew people call it vision of the night, okay? So night visions, all right? So dreams are a type of vision. Now, the nature of this vision is determined by the content of the dream. I believe that all dreams are visions, okay? But the nature of the vision is determined by the content and context in which the content is used in the dream, okay? Now, think about this. Everyone dreams. That means that everyone has visions every day since they were born, basically. Scientifically proven that people dream between 6 to 10 times a night or per day or whatever you want to call it. That's 6 to 10 visions that you have daily. Now, not all visions are from God. Some are from the enemy. Some are from your soul, and there is scripture to back that up. I will gladly point you to it. I just don't have the time right now. I've talked about it in the past in a video called All Dreams Are Spoken. I would recommend that you check that out, okay? So you have visions every day. Does that make you a prophet? No, but you have the spirit of prophecy that lives inside of you, and that's one of the functions of the Spirit of God. Of the 7 spirits are the 7 functions of the Spirit, okay? And so you have that in you as a Christian. Well, every person has access to that because that's how God wants to speak to you. So you have all had visions, whether you know it or not. And that's why the Hebrew people didn't call them just dreams. They were visions, visions of the night, okay? While they were pondering things, while they were thinking about things, they had a dream, and that dream would give them an explanation, okay? In Daniel's case, we know that this is a vision of things to come because that's what the angel tells us. We also have scripture to collaborate with this because Daniel had Isaiah and he had Jeremiah. And he talked to Ezekiel because Ezekiel was around his time as well, at least in the same century. And so Daniel also had life experiences because of Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadnezzar's dream, okay? So next we were going to look at, we've established this is a dream, so now let's start to dig into the dream, or this is a vision type of dream. So let's start to dig into the meat of what this vision is talking about, okay? So the first thing that he says is he saw the 4 winds that were churning the great sea in verse 2. All right, so the number 4 has a spiritual significance. 4 represents authority, reigning and ruling, Messiah, diversity, a door, a portal, heaven, dominion, control, or judgment. Why? Because the 4th son was Judah. Jesus was from the tribe of Judah. Judah reigns and rules, right? And it can also represent worship because Judah means to raise your hand and worship. And so forth, okay? And the number 4 is a dalet, which is a door. Jesus is the door. So again, we have another association, correlation to door, and so forth, all right? So this is interesting that these 4 are given authority or dominion from heaven. It actually says that they're seated above all of heaven or whatever, and that is that God sends them down from the heavens to stir these things up. So these are, we're going to get into this here. We see the 4 winds being mentioned, all right? In the Greek, in the book of Revelation, the 4 winds are being held back by angels so that they won't blow across the sea or any trees. And when this happens, physically speaking, biologically speaking, if there was no wind, lakes, rivers, creeks, streams would dry up. The ocean would be fine probably, but there would be the water that went up would only be able to come back down, and then it would only come down where it was at. There would be no wind to blow it, no wind to move it across the, you see what I'm saying? And so it takes all of the water going up and coming down through the evaporation cycle being spread across the world in order to continue or perpetuate that evaporation cycle. Okay, so streams, rivers, etc., they would all become dry up. Big lakes like a sea. Let me just put that on silent. Big lakes like the Great Lakes, or a sea like the Sea of the Dead Sea, etc. Those might be okay because the water might go up and then come right back down. But you got to think the water's going up and it's not dispersing. It's not being blown anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Okay. So we learn a little bit more from this, okay? Shortly after this happens, or around that same time, we see in the book of Revelation that this is when the sixth seal is broken, when the four angels are held back, or are holding back the winds. That's the same time that the sixth seal is broken, and that's when it says the multitude of... it's when the angel says in the book of Revelation that he tells John he hears the angel saying, don't touch this, don't touch that, don't touch the trees or the earth or anything, no destruction of any kind until we seal the 144,000. So they have to go, they seal the 144,000, and then at that time, you see John sees all of the cloud of witnesses, or he sees the martyrs, the Christian martyrs who died for their testimony, coming to heaven, and then you see the sixth seal being broken. Okay? And so that's when the trumpets start to get blown. So this is the time when the sixth seal is broken that the sun turns black and the moon turns red. And so that indicates when these things are going to happen. It also shows us that when you know how Jesus says, well, when the sun goes black and the moon turns red is when I'm coming back, right? That doesn't mean he's coming back at that exact moment and hour, because we would see that and know exactly, hey, he's coming back. Okay, and the reason I say he's not coming back at that exact time is because after the sixth seal is broken is when the seven trumpets are starting to be blown, and that's when the Christians start to appear in heaven that were martyred in the last days. When the trumpets get blown, far worse things happen on earth than what you can even imagine. Like, we have it written in the Bible, but it's worse than what you think. It's bad. It's the wrath and judgment of God. We're not here for that wrath and judgment, okay? We're here for part of the indignation. We will see part of the indignation, but we will not see the wrath that comes when the persecution comes for Christians. And it will be straight out slaughter of Christians. People say, oh, well, we won't be here when the Antichrist is here. You're wrong. We will be here when the Antichrist is here. Because it says in the book of Daniel that he wages war against God's holy ones and kills a number. He says that there are many that go into captivity. Many are run through the sword. Many are burned. Many are... decapitated, and all kinds of things. And then some still remain until the end of when Jesus comes. And that's interesting. They're probably the sealed ones, right? So anyway, then we take a look here. All right. The four angels that hold back the winds are the ones that God bestowed or gave the task of striking the earth and bringing forth the due judgment of the wicked. So we're about to get into something very interesting because we see the four winds pop up in different places, okay? So Daniel sees that the four winds are responsible for stirring up or bringing forth the beasts of the end of days. And so this could indicate that there's actual tangible spiritual entities that are working to bring about the end of days at some point, and that these beings are being held back for a short period of time. So they stir up, they bring up the beast. That means they're out there working right now. They're doing what they can do to try and see to it that those beasts are able to come forth as is their plan for the end of days. So in Daniel, we see the four beasts rising up, and the word for beast used here is haya, and it means beast. It's used 20 times in the Bible, and each time is in the book of Daniel. 9 times is in reference to the beasts of the earth and Nebuchadnezzar and his dreams, and then 11 times is referring to the beasts of the end of days. All right. Also says that the beasts are giants or great beasts, okay, in his dream. And the word for great is Rabribran, which means large in size, huge, or domineering in character. So they're giants, giant beasts, okay? Now listen to this. In Zechariah 6, 1 through 5, we see that the Zechariah is being shown, I want to say almost the, I have to reread it, but I think the entire book of Zechariah is basically like a John the Revelator type of story here. And so we see Zechariah is shown a vision of the 4 spirits that are sent out from heaven. These spirits correlate to what John sees in Revelation 6, or what Daniel calls the 4 winds, okay? And he says he sees, John says he sees a green horse, whereas Zechariah says he sees a speckled horse. All right, and that doesn't mean that it's not a green horse. It just means that it's spotted, which could show that the horse is a spotted green horse. So let's look here and see if I can find Zechariah for you here. I probably have it pulled up on a tab on my file, but yes, I do. Okay, Zechariah 6. Okay, it says, "Then I turned and raised my eyes and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were coming from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. With the first chariot were red horses, the second chariot black horses, the third chariot white horses, and the fourth chariot dappled horses, strong steeds." That dappled means spotted horses or speckled. "Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, 'What are these, my Lord?' And the angel answered to me and said, 'These are the 4 spirits of heaven, who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth. The one with the black horse is going to the north country, the white going after them, and the dappled are going toward the south country.' Then the strong steeds went out, eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. And he said, 'Go walk to and fro throughout the earth.' So they walked to and fro throughout the earth. And he called to me and spoke to me, saying, 'See, those who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country.'" Okay, well, isn't that very interesting how that lines up with what was seen in the book of Revelation? So Revelation 13, I believe, is where you... no, it's not Revelation 13 is where you see the beasts, but they're the winds. Maybe it's Revelation 6, but the beasts that rise up, the 4 horsemen, that's Zechariah 6, 1 through 5. So we see the 4 horsemen are actual spirits that are sent out to do things. And then John gives us the revelation of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Yes, in chapter 6. So we get the revelation. And so this is all coming from Daniel's dream, by the way. So if you're like, where is this coming from? Where is this information coming from? This is all coming from Daniel's dream, okay? And it goes, this is all tied into his dream. Sorry. Let me just make sure I go back to the right one here. I don't want to. Okay, and that says, "I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a loud voice like thunder, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a white horse, who sat on it with a bow and a crown, was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer." The second seal. "When I opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, 'Come and see.' And I saw another horse, fiery red." So now we have 2 of the spirits that are spoken about in Zechariah. And it's interesting how it's Zechariah chapter 6, and this is Revelation verse 6. Isn't that interesting, don't you think? I think it's interesting because this shows me 6 and 6. It's having to deal with the end of days, okay? So we have the white horse, we have the red horse. And the red horse went out and was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, that the people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword, which means probably words, okay? Then the third seal, scarcity on earth. When he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Come and see." I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he sat on it and had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." And when he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. That word is chloe, or chloros. Here is where we get the word chlorophyll, means green. So it's a pale green horse. It's actually referring to a yellow-green colored horse. So this is the spotted horse, because Zechariah doesn't say what color the spotted horse is. He just says it's dappled. Dappled means it has two colors. And the word chloros means yellow and green. Yellow, green in color. So that's two colors. All right. And this is a green horse, that they say is a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death and Hades, or Death and Hell, and power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. That word beasts right there is therian, and in the book of Revelation, the therian beasts are the hybrid creatures, because that's the same word that's used for the beast, who is the antichrist. And also notice the correlation here, how Daniel, when referencing the end of days, never calls the Antichrist a man. He always calls him a beast, okay? We are going to go a little bit deeper here, and I'm going to share some revelation with you. That was some of it discovered today, some of it discovered in the past. But first, my cup, it says Dreamer. A nice little sip of coffee to get me through. Delicious. Remember to like and subscribe, share with your friends and family, and we will like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, get the word out. And this is good. This is the book of Daniel. We're going over Daniel chapter 7 and his dream, and all of the stuff, how it ties into Daniel chapter 7 also just happens to be one of my favorite topics to talk about. All right, so the first three beasts line up with what John saw in the book of Revelation 13. All right, and this is going back to the beasts that he originally saw. Okay, so we see that in Daniel's dream, he talks about and I want to say it's like the next chapter of Daniel, but he talks about the four winds, and he talks about the four beasts as being separate entities. So there's four winds and there's four beasts. The four winds are not the four beasts. Okay, the four winds are their own entity, and the four beasts are their own entities. So that's a total of 8 entities altogether. All right, 4 and 4. Now remember, that has to do with authority, dominion, a doorway, an open portal. All right, something's going on here. All right, so and then Daniel talks about the 4 actual beasts that he sees, and he sees a beast that looks like a leopard with what was it? Let me scroll back up to the top here. He sees, there was the first like a lion that had eagle's wings, and I watched until its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on its feet like a man and given a man's heart. The second beast is a bear with ribs in its mouth. The next beast is a leopard, which has 4 wings on its back. And then there was a fourth beast that arises up that he says is worse than all of the other, exceedingly dreadful and a terrible, exceedingly strong. Now, I know that people like to say, well, the bear represents Russia and the 4 ribs represent this, the 4-nation alliance or something, and the dragon represents China and this, that, and the other thing. We're trying to figure out supernatural things that are happening on the earth through a natural mindset or a natural perspective. And that's not what is being spoken about here, okay? This is clues that help us know what's going on here. All right. Now, let's see. Get back to where I was here. So we see the 4 beasts, and the word used for leopard in Hebrew comes from a root word which means filtered or clear. Actually, the word that's used is a word in Aramaic that's only used one time in the Bible, but it derives from a Hebrew word, which is the same. I think it's the same word or extremely close in Aramaic, which is what this was written in, is Aramaic. But the root word comes from a word meaning to be filtered or to be clear and transparent. So this shows us that the first beast started out as a hybrid animal, a lion with eagle wings on its back. But then it was filtered or processed until it looked like a man through a process, okay? That's what the leopard represents. The word for plucked out here in Hebrew means to be furbished or fabricated or made to be, polished, or given a new look. So when it says it was raised off of the earth, what is being said here is not that it was lifted up into the sky and raised up into the heavens. It's saying instead of having all of its feet, its four feet on the ground, it was raised up like a man. Right? It was made to stand like a man. And it says this, raised up to stand on its 2 feet rather than crawling on all 4. And then it says it was given the heart of a man. Well, that word for heart is lebeka. It means the mind, will, or emotions, or the soul of a man. Okay? And then, interestingly here, the word used here for man is Enosh. All right? Enosh this takes us back to Genesis chapter 4, when you say Enosh. And that goes all the way back to when the hybridization process started, which was about, I want to say it was like 128 years or something like that, after the fall of mankind, after Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, is when they started to call on the name of the Lord. Well, that word for to call on means to profane. It's Genesis 4:26. It says they began to call upon the name of the Lord, and it literally says they began to profane the name. And the word profane means to alter or do something outside the temple. So they wounded the outside of the temple. Well, we know from the New Testament and in bits and places in the Old Testament that the human body is considered the temple of God. So to alter the temple is to alter the image that you're made in, right? Because God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. If it says in the New Testament that we are the temple of the living God, and then that means that in the Old Testament it's the same thing, because everything that they referenced was a reference to what was in the Old Testament. Nothing about Christianity, except for, well, even Jesus, is not original, separate from Judaism. Everything that we're taught in the Bible was taught in the Torah or the Tanakh or whatever before it was taught in the New Testament. So when they quoted scriptures, they quoted Old Testament. So for us to be the temple of God in the New Testament, we were also the temple of God in the Old Testament, because we don't change. Just like when Paul says there's no male or female in the kingdom of heaven. That doesn't mean there's no female on earth, because this is our kingdom. This is where we were given dominion. But in heaven, it's not like that. And so that's where the New Age people, where the hybrids, the alien creation, the pansperma idea comes from. And that's why they're trying to push this whole transgender idea and trying to make people less like males or females and make them just one gender or one asexual species or whatever. Because they're trying to corrupt what it's like in heaven and make it like that. That's why whenever they say they saw these creatures or these aliens, quote unquote, that they were that they couldn't tell if they were male or female, but they were naked, but they didn't have genitalia. And if you go and you actually study the New Age doctrine, especially stuff that's written by Alice Bailey, who's considered the mother of the New Age, or the Age of Aquarian, or Age of Aquarius, that's what the song The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius is. That's a reference to the new age of man that's coming. That's where the term New Age comes from, meaning that we're about to transition from this state into the next state to be more like our hierarchy overlords, okay? So they were doing this, okay? In Genesis 4:26, they profaned the name, right? And then we see it in Genesis chapter 5 when it starts to list the sons of Cain. We see the name Irad. Irad, I-R-A-D, means a wild ass dragon, meaning a wild donkey dragon. So they were mixing the seeds already at this point. There was some mixing that was happening. All right, now, since Enosh points us back to Genesis chapter 4, they speak of the birth of Enosh and what they were doing in the days of Enoch, and he was a son of Seth. Enosh means a man, a person, or a mortal. So when I read in the scripture up in Daniel chapter 7 where it said the son of man, it didn't call him B'nai Adam, it called him B'nai Enosh, which is a different brand of mankind. It's talking about basically the normal man, okay? Us as human beings, all right? And you can be an Enosh and be a son of God, and you can be an Enosh and also be an Ish. We're going to get into that in a second here. So what they were doing is there was some type of hybridization of humans with animals that was happening in the end of days that's happening in the old days, right? And so because of what we see with the beast that's already mixed, a lion and a bird gets fashioned or formed. It gets filtered, okay, to take the form and stand up. It still has the form of a beast, but now stands on its two legs and has its wings removed. So it looks more like a man, less like a creature, okay? And it literally says it was furbished or created to look like a man, okay? That's what it says in the Aramaic here in the book of Daniel chapter 7. So what we see here is that they were filtering genes. Now, what do we call that today? We call this process genome editing in today's vernacular, or genetic engineering. Now, in 2006, there was actually a National Geographic article that was released, which was talking about how scientists in China created a horse and human embryo that was mixed together. They took the two seeds, a seed and the egg, somehow spliced it together, and they made a viable human being / horse that was growing artificially, and then they said they destroyed it because of ethics reasons. No, they didn't destroy it. They just didn't want people to know that they just created a centaur, right, on purpose. So we see that even today, right now, they're altering the seed of men and mixing it with the seed of animals. And it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be in the days of man, in the end of days. It's happening again now, okay? Now, I think that's a bunch of bullcrap. I do believe that they were hybrid genetic engineering. I think their genetic engineering is probably a century ahead of what we think it actually is. And because I've seen, you can look this up online, where they are actually taking and mixing human DNA with spider silk DNA to make a strong bulletproof flesh that can withstand a 50 caliber bullet. And they've tested it. You can find this on the internet. They shoot it with a 50 caliber bullet, and the bullet doesn't fully go through. 50 caliber bullet on a normal human being, on normal human flesh, would blow you to pieces. It's a big caliber. It's going to leave a hole like this if you ever got shot by it. Okay, now, what we have to point out here, and this is leading up to what's going to go into part 2, so this is important because we're still on like verse 3 or verse 4 of Daniel's dream out of like 14 or 15 verses or something. We have to understand that there's different types of men, different types of human beings, or what God calls humans. And this is overlooked in the Bible, okay? This is overlooked. You might have to go back and watch this a few times, and definitely share it with your friends because everyone needs to know this. And also, I want to hear your comments on it, right? But we see at least 3 different types of men. I would say 4 if you want to include the Ben Enosh. But there's B'nai Ha-Adam, B'nai Ish, and B'nai Ha-Elohim, okay? Ish is first mentioned when Adam sees Eve for the first time. He says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. And now Strong's defines an Ish as great, a mighty man of high degree, him that is a husband, mankind, or champion. So to be called B'nai Ish is to be considered the highest form or the highest caliber of human being. Now, B'nai Ish and Enosh, Ish is derived from the word Enosh, okay? And so is the word Isha, which means wife, all right? Ish is, then we have the word B'nai Ha-Adam, okay? B'nai Ha-Adam is the sons of Adam. They are not pure human beings. Okay, typically when you see the B'nai Ha-Adam, It's not talking about pure human beings. It can. I want to say at some point it does say that there is, but I'd have to go and look for the specific scripture to find it, okay? But the word Adam, like in Genesis 6:1-4, uses the word Adam, the daughters, the Benot Ha-Adam, okay? That word means hypocrite, the common sort, low man, to be of a low degree, or a person. So it's talking about a low degree person. Why would God consider a person to be of low degree? Now, some could say, well, that's meaning that they're not humble, they're arrogant, they're prideful, they're sinful. All those things are true, but this is talking about something else, and I'm actually going to cover this for you, and it's actually going to take us to Deuteronomy and Jeremiah, okay? Let's start out with Jeremiah 31, verse 27, okay? And the Bnei Ha-Adam can be used to describe just man, but most commonly it's a reference to a despicable person, and it can be speaking of those hybrids. So we see a clear reference to this in Jeremiah 31:27. All right, it says, "Behold," and I'm doing this in reverse order. I really should probably start out with Deuteronomy, but I'm going to start out with Jeremiah 31:27 and then reference back to that when I read Deuteronomy, okay? Jeremiah 31:27 says, "Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and the seed of beast." Interesting here. The word for sow in this verse is zara, which is the word for seed, meaning children, by the way. So I will make children. It also means to bear, to conceive seed, to set with the sower, or to yield. So he will cause them to bear seed or conceive seed. What seed? Children, to bear children. So he will mix, listen to this, he will sow, cause the house of Israel and Judah to conceive seed of man and beast. How is mankind going to conceive the seed of a beast? Did anybody notice that? God says he will sow the seed of man with the seed of Israel, and the seed of, the word for beast is behemoth. And that takes you back to Genesis 6, when it says that God will destroy man, he will destroy the beast, he will destroy the reptiles and lizards, and he will destroy the birds. Those are all commas. It says he will destroy man and beast, though, so that's man and behemoth. Okay? And behemoth, we know from Job chapter, whatever chapter it is in Job, but it's in Job, that behemoth is like a dinosaur. It's giant, huge, has a strong tail. You can knock over trees, right? It's just a big beast, a big creature, okay? So man and beast, behemoth, man and behemoth. And then it says, comma, creeping thing, lizard, and bird. And if you go back and look at what they've discovered about dinosaurs, is that dinosaurs are a mix of bird and reptile, or bird and lizard, creeping thing. That's what it means. Creeping thing means. It means lizard. Okay? It says man and behemoth, comma, and bird and beast, comma. It will destroy them all. So the dinosaurs were a mix of bird and beast. And if you go back and look, they found evidence that T-Rex, baby T-Rex, will be born with feathers. You have the Velociraptor, which had feathers. It looked like a mix of a hawk and some kind of lizard. And there was a bunch of dinosaurs out there that they found. I believe one is a raptor, Mongolese raptor, something like that they found in China, in Mongolia, that has pin feathers, and they discovered all that. So you see that there was a mixing that was happening here. Okay, now we see another example of this. All right, listen, Deuteronomy 32 verses 5 through 9. Verse 5, we'll start right here at verse 5. They have corrupted themselves. They are not his children. Remember how people say, well, we're all God's children. And you say, no, that's not what Jesus said. Guess what? That's not what Moses said either. They have corrupted themselves. They are not his children because of their blemish. A perverse and crooked generation. Do you thus deal with the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father who bought you? Has he not made you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the place of his inheritance. Okay, so in verse 5, it says they have corrupted themselves. They are not his children. They are not God's children because of the blemish that they created. Okay, now we typically think of a blemish as being just something minor, right? Like it's a little pimple, it's a little scratch on your face or something. It's just a little blemish, just a little blip that doesn't really matter. But in Hebrew, the word for blemish here is referring to a genetic defect or a birth defect. But it's specifically talking about some kind of defect that you're born with, okay? In this case, they caused themselves to be defective. And we see this type of defect mentioned in Leviticus, especially in Leviticus 18, Leviticus 21, Leviticus 22, when it's talking about who can be a priest, who can go into the house of God, who can go into the tabernacle, into the Holy of Holies. It had to be somebody that had no genetic defect of any sort. You couldn't be too small. You couldn't be deformed. You couldn't have a birth defect, and it lists all of the different types of defects. If there was any kind of birth defect, you couldn't go in. And then it also talks about the different animals that can be used for sacrifice, and if they had any kind of genetic defect, they couldn't be used. They had to be a pure and spotless sacrifice. There could be no genetic defects, period. So when it says, because of their blemish, they were not his children, it means their genetic defects, what they did to alter themselves, because it says they did it to themselves. Okay. Isn't that interesting? It says they corrupted themselves. They are not his children. They did it to themselves. It was on purpose. It wasn't just something that they were born doing. Right. Okay. So you can see this. He says that makes them the sons of Adam. Okay. He separated the sons of Adam from the sons of Israel that he bought. And some translations say the sons of God, but in Hebrew it says the sons of Israel. Okay. And so how do we know that this is the sons of Adam that are the hybrids? Because whose land was being taken when Israel went and took the promised land? The Canaanites. And if you read about the Canaanites, they were hybrids. They were giants. They were Anakim. They were Rephaites, whatever you want to say. They were giants. Rephaim means unforgivable, rejected, giant, sick, wounded. And what does it say in Genesis 4:26? It says they began to wound or pierce themselves. The wounded ones, the Rephaim, the unforgivable ones, the only ones that have no chance of making it to heaven. They are completely rejected and thrown into the fire, which is what makes me think blasphemy of the Holy Spirit has a little bit more to do with that than it does with just saying something bad about God. Because those are the ones that never get a chance. There is no forgiveness for Rephaim. Nevertheless, we are told that we have to preach to them all. All right. So, and we have, that shows us here, all right, so the sons of Adam are the hybrids. It's their land that's being divided as an inheritance to God's inheritance. Israel is his inheritance. We are his inheritance. Okay, we're pure stock humans. All right, now we see the daughters of Adam. That brings us to who are the daughters of Adam. What they're being spoken of in Genesis 6:4. They're not just children of Adam and Eve. They're not pure stock humans. They're mixed DNA. They are, according to God, the daughters of the genetically defective mankind that purposefully altered their DNA. that purposely cause themselves to be defective in the eyes of the Lord. And I'm not saying that that means if you were born with like a crippled hand or some sort of genetic defect that God doesn't accept you. This is a completely different thing. This is people who willingly and knowingly went and did something to alter their DNA or sleep with animals and create hybrid offspring, which is what it says in the end of days, according to Jeremiah 31, will be happening. In plain English, their seed will be mixed with the seed of beasts and man. And then what does God call them? At that point, he calls them beasts. So in Genesis 6:4, when the sons of God saw the daughters of men and they took them as their wives, this was an evil thing to do to the Lord because those daughters of Adam were not pure humans. They were mixed with animals. They were creatures. And so in God's eyes, that was the same as men getting with an animal and having babies with animals. In fact, like I said before, in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, whenever it talks about the end times creature, whenever it talks about the antichrist, the only time it says he's a man is it says the mark of the name of a man. But every single time it calls him a creature, a beast. It actually uses the word in Greek therion, which means a creature or beast that is unfit for sacrifice. Well, what makes an animal unfit for sacrifice? Genetic defect, a genetic deformation. And then last but not least, of course, we have the sons of God. The sons of God are not the fallen angels, because Paul very clearly tells us that God has never called an angel a son. Never. I'm sorry, that's what it says. And you say, well, what about in Job 1, in Job 2, in Job 32? Yeah, I've read those. Those are talking about men. It says the sons of God sang with the morning stars. That's what it translates to in English, but what it says in Hebrew is, and the morning star, which we know from the book of Revelation, the bright and morning star is Jesus, sang with the sons of God. Well, Luke 3:38 tells us that Adam was the son of God. Well, in Genesis chapter 2, Adam and Eve were both called B'nai Ha Elohim, sons of God. They were called the Ha Adam, the man. God didn't even call Eve a woman. Adam called Eve a woman. God did not name Eve. Adam named Eve. God called them man. Isn't that an interesting thing to think about? So when we think of Galatians 3:28, where it says there is no male or female or Jew nor Greek or slave nor free in heaven, it's because God looks at us all as mankind. So the sons of God that were singing at the beginning of creation were Adam and Eve. The sons of God, and then we know that a son of God is anyone who's being led by the Spirit of God, according to Romans 4? Is it Romans 4? I want to say. I don't remember, but pretty sure it's Romans 4, or Romans 8:14, somewhere in there, right? But we know from there that anyone who's led by the Spirit of God is considered a son of God. Okay, but not angels. So there's two qualifications. You have to be human. You have to be doing the will of God. Well, how do we know that there were people that were doing the will of God? How do we know that? Because of Cain and Abel. They were giving sacrifices. And guess what? The Lord was speaking to Cain and said, Cain, sin is lurking at your door and you need to conquer it or it will consume you. Did God just speak that to him? No. He went and spoke to him face to face and said that to him. And then he went and killed his brother. He spoke to Abraham face to face. So there were people that were still doing the will of God, that were still separated and keeping themselves clean and weren't doing wicked and evil things. But then they saw they were led by the lust of the eyes, or the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And they slept with these hybrid animal human creatures that they saw were quote unquote beautiful or good to look at, right? Or fair. So that's who the B'nai Elohim are. That's human beings like me and you that are led by the Spirit of God. But then they went and did what was not right, and they gave that up. Okay? So the Nephilim are not the giants. The Nephilim are the fallen angels. And how do we know this? Because of Isaiah 14, when it says that Satan has fallen. It uses the word nephalta, which is a singular referring to he has fallen. Nephalta. Singular, nephal. Plural, nephalim. Nephilim. Nephilim. Okay? So the Nephilim are the fallen angels. And I know that that goes against the church narrative, the current mainstream narrative, especially in the groups that I roll with, but that is biblically accurate. That is what the Bible tells us. Okay, that is all for part one. Let's take a look at the comments here. What is the Hebrew word for blemish? Let's take a look here. I know it's like the word mum, and then there's tamum, tamim, and in that particular verse where it was saying, and they caused themselves to blemish, it was the word mamum or amum. So let me look here, and it will be Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. We'll pull up the Hebrew here. It was an inheritance of the Most High when he separated the sons of Adam boundary the people according to the sons of God. That's a little bit earlier than that. So let's go. I think it's verse 5, right? They have corrupted themselves. It uses the word shehet for corrupted. In shehet, it means literally to be corrupted or to be spoiled, destroyed, to cause oneself to perish, to cause oneself to decay. And so that's where we get that, okay? And then, let's see, because of this perverse generation, crooked, they corrupted themselves. Because of their blemish, it's mumam. So it uses the word mum, which means blemish or defect, literally. That's literally what the word means. It means blemish, blot, spot, or defect. Passive participle from an unused root, meaning to stain, blemish physically or morally. And we see this in, let me just take a look here. Leviticus 21:17, 18, 21:21, 21:23, 22:20, 22:21, 22:25, 24:19, 24:20, Numbers 19:2, when it says, it's talking about the, this is the ordinance of the law which has commanded Jehovah, saying, speak to the sons of Israel, B'nai Yisrael, that they bring to you a heifer, red, a duma, a red heifer without blemish, tamima, and that again comes from the word mum. There's not to be a defect, mum, that never has come under a yoke. So no defect and hasn't come under a yoke. So it has to be a perfect, pure heifer. So it's used multiple times. Deuteronomy 15:21, Deuteronomy 17, Deuteronomy 32, 2 Samuel 14:21. 2 Samuel 14:25 says, and there was no blemish within him. It says, and Absalom, no one there was, none, for his good looks in all of Israel, who was praised as much as from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was in him no blemish. So that means he was absolutely a pure, perfect, physical specimen of a man. And Absalom means father of peace, or father is peace. So I got it there. Job 11:15, thy face is without spot. Job 31:7, Proverbs 9, a wicked man himself a blot. A wicked man getteth himself a blot, meaning a moral blemish. And Daniel 14, Daniel 1:4, they had to be perfect men with no defect who were good looking, and it's used 21 times in the Bible, and every time it means that there's a spot, a defect, or a blemish. Hopefully that answers your question. So much to learn. Hi from Delaware. Hi in Toronto, Canada. Yo, please forgive me, but I don't understand what ten cuidad. I don't know what that's saying either. Any crypto tonight? No. This is the dream teaching stuff. Maybe there'll be crypto stuff on Wednesday if the Lord says something, but other than that, no. Okay, that's all for tonight, guys. 59 minutes and 22 seconds. Love y'all. Be blessed. And until next time, I will see you again soon, Wednesday. Remember, we are trying to help take care of a family that's in need. House was hit by a tornado, roof destroyed, yard destroyed, electric pole was knocked down. They have no electricity, no power. It's going to cost them thousands and thousands of dollars, but we'd like to help them as best as we can. So if you'd like to contribute, everything rolling right down there. Partner with us, firesidegrace.com, all that. Brandy's Venmo. At Fireside Grace on PayPal. I'm sorry if you don't like PayPal. We use another Stripe on our website, so you can always go to the website and use that also. All right. Love you guys. Be blessed. And until next